Hello, welcome back to my channel. I had a lot of fun as well as a few ideas since making the documentary recently. I was actually inspired by a video that popped up on my feed to do this and put it into fruition because I have been thinking about it for a while. So this video isn't going to be as proper or formal as the documentary. I just wanted to do something fun, a chill introspective into Paramore's discography, and something that's inclusive as well as with the fans' perspective in mind. A bit of an Eras analyze for Paramore given they are currently on the Eras tour with Taylor Swift at the moment, so it's only fitting. I made a post on Reddit basically asking how you guys view each album in terms of influences, how their sound matured and how it shifted throughout the years, and what makes Paramore sound like Paramore as a listener, and how you view the instrumental growth and Hayley's way of approaching the lyrics. Now for this video, I want to go in as much depth about the technicalities and focus on the band's music as a whole and not just one album or era, and kind of pinpoint how they evolved in the 20-decade-long journey that they've been on. There was one Redditor who grouped the first 3 records into their pop-punk era, which is pretty self-explanatory. So to begin, we are going to start with All We Know Is Falling. So this album was the sound of trial and discovery. Like, they knew what genre path they wanted to embark on, but they weren't quite there yet of exactly knowing what they wanted to sound like. And given they were still in high school and pretty much rushed this album, it's a good starter, but I think this album would have been a lot more different if they had more time to work on it. So it's pretty solid for what they were working with. At this point, they weren't really new to songwriting, like they were dabbling into the music side of things, but they weren't doing it officially. So before Paramore became a thing, like, they were dabbling in it for a bit, and you can hear the adolescence of it, but it's still pretty good given their age. For me personally, the songs that hold the strongest sound to what's known as Paramore is Emergency and Pressure. I would have loved a lot more songs like Never Let This Go and Brighter, and this is why it kind of circles back to that sound but in a better way in the future. But for what it's worth, this album, it sounds like it's from 2005, but it's in a nice nostalgic way. On to the next album, Riot. This album is where they get more energetic. Like, at this point, they'd been on the road, touring for 2 years, seeing what sounds and what bands at the time were popular and which songs of theirs catered to the masses the most. This is the album where they get more traction and more of an idea of what Paramore needed to sound like at that time, which carried into Brand New Eyes in the latter years. I would suggest that playing Warped Tour is what aided the theme of Riot, because a lot of the songs on this album are tougher, zesty or sassy with a bit of attitude, gritty, anthemic, and more energized compared to their first album. Especially in terms of how Hayley chose to approach the lyrics vocally. Like, you can hear a lot more of that typical teenage angst attitude that evokes more emotion for the listener, and I feel like she did that really well on this album. I feel All We Know Is Falling still had that sweetness to it since the band was still in that infant stage and quite didn't know how to make their mark, and given that this was only 2 years after their first release, they went through a lot of growth and really wanted to make a statement with this album. It's no surprise that this was their breakout album with back-to-back hits. Like, the only song that I agree was kind of meh was We Are Broken. It does get repetitive after a bit, and it doesn't really strike me emotionally as much as the other songs. I did enjoy the final Riot's rendition of it, but I'm not gonna lie, I do skip this one if it comes on. It doesn't match the tone of the other songs in the album. Like, this one kind of just stands out on its own. But I will forever stand by Let the Flames Begin and Fences. Fences is highly underrated and I don't play it as much, but what they did with Let the Flames Begin is absolutely phenomenal. And how the song became bigger and bigger over the years, I'm glad that they carried the song with them and it wasn't one that they just stopped playing. There's a video, I'll link it in the description if I can find it. There's a video of like earlier renditions of Let the Flames Begin before they extended it into the different outros that we've seen throughout the years. So if I can find it, then I'll link it below, and if not, then I'll just make my own version of it and post it so you guys can see like the progression between 2007 to how they play it today, how we know it is today. But yeah, Let the Flames Begin is one of my top favorite songs by them. When I discovered them, it was around 2010, 2011, and I was watching their Reading and Leeds performance, and I saw this song, and I absolutely fell in love with how powerful it was, so I've been hooked ever since. Now onto their third release, Brand New Eyes. Brand New Eyes. This fucking album. Brand New Eyes was definitely the most Paramore quote-unquote album, perfect for that pop-punk wave of 2009. 2009 was really a good year for music. I don't know what the hell was in the water that year, but I'd really love it if music could hit like that again, because we don't have that massive creativity in the music scene today. There is some, but it's not as good as it was back then. A lot of it today just feels gimmicky and lacks passion, but anyway. When you think of the band, this is the sound that everyone thinks of when talking about Paramore. Sonically, you can tell the band stuck 10 toes in the dirt, maybe a few stomps and kicks with how comfortable they were in the writing aspect. Without a doubt, this was their heaviest album. Given what was happening around this time, you can feel the weight throughout each song, but I feel that's what made it stand out so much. Like, the sweet innocence that came through on the first two albums were completely gone by this release. All the molding they did leading up to this point was done, and they had a lot more wiggle room to cement their sound into that typical Paramore theme and just blow it out of the water. I could say that Misery Business crafted brick by brick and Careful, For a Pessimist sonically led into Ignorance, and so on. Like, you can hear references of Riot, but in a, I don't want to say keep saying mature, but it is in a much more mature way. And what I like the most about this album is that you can hear the elements and the growth of the last two albums all in one bundle. Like, the three albums up to this point have been their most consistent. It's been a gradual growth that makes sense, and their hold on pop-punk roots was strong with this one. There isn't really a single song on this record that I can say I don't like. Honestly, it's just 10s across the board with this one. I will say what impressed me the most while I was doing research for the documentary was that Hayley felt like what she wrote for Brand New Eyes wouldn't really live up compared to their last two releases. But this was the beginning of her truly being honest about her feelings in music. Riot, I feel, was more of an album just to have fun and rave to, but B&E felt like a very personal diary. And she was brave as hell for writing some of the things that she did about her ex while he was still in the band, but hey, we all gotta voice our opinions somehow. And her vocal range and capability during this time was absolutely beautiful. While I've been doing the live evolution videos, it's crazy to see how fast her voice evolved when you compare to their start to at this point. It's only been like, what, 3 or 4 years up until this point. And they toured a lot during those few years, and it's crazy to see like how much her voice has grown by that point. Because like sometimes it doesn't even, like when you're listening to their older stuff compared to Brand New Eyes, it doesn't even seem like it's the same person singing, because her vocal growth was just amazing up until this point. The instrumentation on this album is really good too. Some songs I still struggle to play on guitar, and I've been playing guitar since I was 15, for a decade now. The guys did an awesome job with the tones they chose that still gives me chills to listen to today. This album sounds like the era it came out, like 2009, it sounds like that era, but given that everyone is diving into the nostalgic feel today, had they released this today, I feel it still would have been a successful album, without a doubt. Like, 10s across the board, like I said, 10 out of 10 with this album. I love this album. Now on to the Singles Club. I wouldn't call Singles Club a bridge between Brand New Eyes and Self-Titled, really. I feel this was more of the band raking in that last bit of pop-punk sound that they had for B&E, and releasing it just to close out that era and give the fans something, because the band almost broke up entirely. I feel this EP was a farewell response to the Farrell brothers, mainly Josh. Like, it's blatantly stated throughout all of the lyrics in Monster, lyrics like, "Call me a traitor, I'm just collecting your victims. Don't you ever wonder how we'd survive? Well, now that you're gone, the world is ours." Honestly, if we're talking about diss tracks, this was the band's diss track to Josh after that whole blow up. A handful of songs on B&E were diss tracks to him, but I feel like this was the final one before they were over it and ready to move on. I don't have much to say about this one given the situation. It's criminal that they stopped playing Monster, by the way, because that's another top favorite of mine. Hello Cold World is a really cute song. That and Renegade, they do hold some elements that is later heard in self-titled, so it's kind of no surprise that they went into that direction because you heard the start of it with those songs. So, and it makes sense, they were in the middle of rediscovering their sound for that era, so of course, once the Farrell brothers left, that was going to be a huge shift sonically. So, no surprise there. Now on to, I don't want to say if this one was a favorite. I don't know. I'm still I'm still working with this one. This was when I fell in love with Paramore. This is when I really started to get to know them, so it does hold a special place in my heart. 13-year-old me was just completely enamored by this point. But self-titled is where the complaints of I miss the old Paramore began. Now self-titled was a huge shift musically, as I mentioned before. In terms of official releases, they went on a 4-year hiatus to live their lives. Like all the other releases, there was only like 2 years in between, so this is the first time they had a big gap in between releasing something. So once they did come back, you can tell they had a clean slate to just do whatever they wanted. They wanted a new sound, and that's what they went with. I would say self-titled sonically stands on its own, since After Laughter was another huge shift. They just wanted to do something fun with this album, and you can hear it, it really shows. I feel like this album, given like all the critiques that happened around this time, I feel like self-titled needed to happen so they could branch out of that typical pop punk sound and find more range that would fit Paramore. Because up until that point, that was a sound that they were really only known for, and most likely it gets tiring and restricting to release the same album every time, so I do understand the critiques of this album. Like some of the songs, like it does seem like it's all over the place in retrospect, because again, they never ventured into this direction before. So it was probably strange for them too to completely rebrand, but it was what they were working with at the time. You can hear that they were trying to find that sweet spot in between being more pop focused and radio driven while still holding onto that rock infusion, if that makes sense. Like this album was the web, for me, it's the web that connects all of their sounds, future and old. So again, when I say this album needed to happen, that's what I mean, because once they did self-titled, they were able to branch out into other sounds that I feel after this one, it wasn't really that much of a shock, because we've already, up until this point, we've already heard something different from Paramore. So the shift in After Laughter, I won't say it was really much surprising, but I'm not going to get into that just yet. With this album, I only listened to a few songs still, because some of the stuff just doesn't resonate as much with me as it did before. It is still a blast from the past if it comes on, but I just don't go out of my way to play it. I will say, it would have been nice if some other songs like Crazy Girls, Be Alone, or Fast in My Car got as much airplay as Ain't It Fun and Still Into You. As much as I love those songs, don't get me wrong, I love those songs, they're bops, they're fun, but I am so tired of hearing it on the radio. Like anytime Paramore is on the radio, it's either that song or the other, nothing else. It's like they have a whole catalog, my guy. Like you can play something else, it's okay to put on something else. But that's my only critique with this album. Like I've heard those songs so much, I do not need to hear it anymore. Like I still love them, but it's just, I heard it too much. Daydreaming is my deep cut on this release. I didn't like it at first, and I can't remember why. I don't know why I didn't like it at first, but as I've gotten older, I have such a soft spot for that song. It's such a beautiful song, I love it. But anyway, with this album, it does sound like they tried to circle back to that anthemic feel of Riot, but in a new way. And even though the fandom doesn't like to talk about Jeremy, he did his thing with the bass, I do have to say that. Hearing songs live, whatever tone or distortion he had on his bass really made the songs unique. And it kind of, I'll put in a clip so I can show an example, but it kind of reminds me of an engine revving, which is, it was a really cool tone on his bass. But overall, sonically, there's a lot of tones that we haven't heard from the band use at all before this point. A huge unpopular opinion of mine, maybe others will agree, but once they finished the spring tour and the festival performances and all the touring and stuff, and they started the self-titled tour towards the fall and winter, Hayley's new poppy cutesy voice didn't match when they tried to play their older songs. Like, maybe it was due to vocal stamina, because they did tour like crazy that year, but the way she chose to sing songs like Ignorance in the same tone that she sung Still Into You, maybe it was hard at the time to sing as aggressive as before, when she developed her voice to be softer and couldn't really figure out how to mesh the two tones well. But she did it a lot better in This Is Why, which scratched a perfect itch in my brain. But just during that time, how she sung some of the more rougher tones in that cutesy voice was really annoying. And it kind of, and I hate to say this, but it kind of put me off. Like, some of the songs, maybe others will agree, maybe it's just me, I don't know. But yeah, after Laughter, when she came back in This Is Why and started doing the rough vocals again, I was actually pleasantly surprised, because I thought she was gonna give up singing like that, but I'm glad she found a good medium, because it really suits her, and I'm happy that she stuck with it. After Laughter. For me, this was underwhelming at first, because at the time, I was going through a hard time too, and I vividly remember when the album came out and I listened to it for the first time. I was in class and I was sitting there like, man, I don't want to cry right now and acknowledge my feelings. What is happening? But after Laughter, it had to grow on me after a few listens, and now I do appreciate it. Given what Hayley and Taylor was going through at the time, and then having Zach come back to uplift both of them, it makes sense that this album leaned towards more of what Zach was doing in Half Noise, if that makes sense. Like, he came back in to uplift them, so of course they're gonna lean more towards Zach's vision to make it more inclusive for him, given he came back after however many years. And then also, given the tone, I don't think they really had the energy to put together a typical Paramore sounding album, let alone even write an album at all. So I do appreciate it for what it came out to be. I'd say my standouts are No Friend and Idol Worship, without a doubt. They've never written anything like that before, and I loved how eerily Idol Worship bled into No Friend when they played it live, because it creates this haunting, dark energy that I love so much, because they don't normally do heavy and dark songs, but when they do, gosh, I love it. I love their heavier songs. Like, don't get me wrong, I do like the poppier stuff, but I listen to heavier songs like Spirit Box and Loathe, and I listen to a lot of heavier stuff. But when they do dive into heavy themes and sounds like that, it always makes me fall in love even more. Like, because it's so contrasting and it's so powerful, and they don't do it that often, which makes me love it. No Friend is my absolute favorite guitar melody Taylor has ever written. Like, he has a lot of good melodies, but No Friend, I don't know. No Friend just really sticks with me, because he's basically playing the same few notes, but like interchanges them a little bit, and it's on a loop pedal, and he just increases the reverb and the echo of it, the resonance over and over, and it sounds so haunting. I love it. Like, when I first listened to it, the studio version doesn't do it justice, because it's a pretty cool song, but I did not know, like, when they played it live, I did not know that the song was that massive loud, and I'm so mad that I missed out on. I was supposed to see them on what tour was it? I think it was either tour 2 or tour 3, and my mom said I couldn't go, and they played No Friend live, and I'm watching my friend's Snapchat story just pissed off because I couldn't go. But yeah, that song, it is so interesting. Basically, Hayley wrote, she's too nice, because you can tell this is something she wanted to say, but she's too nice to say it on her own. So for No Friend, she wrote a letter to Aaron from Me Without You, one of her favorite bands, basically expressing how she was feeling at that time. Like, being in a band, she's going through something, and you have all these people looking up to her, and she's just like, what the fuck do you guys want from me? So basically, like, she said some of it in Idol Worship, but the lyrics in No Friend was definitely like ripping off the band-aid, basically saying, fuck off. She just couldn't say it herself, so she had her friend do it. And then with Aaron pairing it with metaphors and references to the band as a whole in such a poetic way, I love shit like that. That's all I can say. I'm done ranting about No Friend and Idol Worship. I just wanted to express how much I loved it. But lyrically though, this album circles back to Brand New Eyes, but in a much more vulnerable way. Clear as day, you know how she's feeling in the midst of a divorce, and I'm so sorry that she had to endure that because of that man. He's very selfish and gross with how he treats women, but this isn't that video. I only didn't like this era because it was really hard to see how heartbroken she was, and a lot of videos from that time I still find myself holding my breath watching them because you can just feel the pain in her voice. I really don't like seeing her like that. Like, it was nice to see that as the tours went on, she opened up a bit more and started to find herself again by the time Tour 5 came. But yeah, even when you're grieving, it is good to just sometimes dance and forget about your problems, even if it helps you smile for a little bit. I did call B&E their heaviest album, but I'd say After Laughter, from Hayley's perspective, was the heaviest lyricism that we've seen so far. Very heart-wrenching. But yet crying while still listening to bops is a mood. Though it was vastly different, it was very cohesive compared to Self-Titled. Like, sonically, they wanted to step back and write something chill for a bit. I feel each song on After Laughter blended into the next one very seamlessly, and it felt, like I said, it felt cohesive compared to Self-Titled. Self-Titled kind of just, I won't say it felt like let's just throw some shit at the wall and see what sticks. I feel like they did have a plan, but overall it was still kind of a bit all over the place, just a little bit, not that much. It's still a good album. But back to After Laughter, I feel it was definitely underrated, but from a fan's perspective, it does hold a sweet spot to all of us. So the masses really don't matter with this one because us fans, we know the worth in After Laughter. We know what it was meant for. And on to the last album that closes out this whole journey, This Is Why. I would call This Is Why their full circle sound. At this rate, they know how to tap into what their typical Paramore sound is and take it in any direction. Sonically, I would say this album was a blend of a more mature version of Riot and After Laughter. Like, Hayley had a particular tone that she sang in during Riot, and some of the songs on This Is Why just gave me chills because I could hear the Riot version of her voice, but just more matured, if that makes sense. This sound was very fitting given their current climate. It didn't really surprise me at all, and I thoroughly enjoyed the sound that they did for this album, and I do hope that they keep it for any future releases because I really enjoyed their tone with this one. I say this album is a blend of Riot and After Laughter because it very much sounds like a polished version of those two sounds. Also some hints of Hayley's solo albums as well, kind of all just meshed into one thing. They sound very relaxed but very confident, and Hayley's vocals, they do sound a lot more raw compared to the compression on the other releases. It sounds almost close to what a demo would sound like, but just touched up a little bit. But it does give the album character because this is the only album where she sounds like that. All of the other songs are like super compressed and they have all these mastering effects, whatever they do in production, to make it sound compact and radio ready. But this one literally sounds like they all just picked up their instruments in the room and just hit record and played the song. So I do love that tone about it. It kind of surprised me at first because it kind of left this unfinished feel to it, but at this point, after listening so many times to this album, I feel like it does give it character. I will say what did surprise me a little is that Hayley didn't really add as much harmonies to the songs with this album than she did in other ones. I feel like each song is straight to the point with a few oohs and ahs in the background. Personally, I feel like she could have added a little more. Maybe I'm the only one and I'm just being nitpicky, but low-key, I feel like she could have added some more background vocals. Like, I always enjoy the background vocals and singing along while the song plays, but maybe that's just me. And then also, another nitpicky thing is how she approached the songs, more laid back. It kind of felt like, though I did say they felt more relaxed, but it kind of also at the same time felt like, alright, we gotta do one more fucking album, let's just record this shit and get it out the way. I'm done. I'm done with this contract, I just want to get my check and go. Like, it's not in a bad way at all. I don't say it to say it in a bad way, it just, you can tell they're so sick of this industry, and I don't blame them. It's been 20 years with this job. The people are tired, alright? They just wanted to get the album out and go. And also, given how short the era was, like, again, they were ready to hop out, and I don't blame them. But my highlights are Big Man Little Dignity, Figure 8, Thick Skull, You First, and the title track, This Is Why. I listened to those on repeat all the time. Cried a few times to Thick Skull after I was going through a breakup, but anyway. This was definitely the full circle of Paramore, and it was such a perfect way to close out this whole quote-unquote Paramore journey. What I really loved about This Is Why is that you can hear Taylor's input a lot more on this record, and I feel this album was driven in his direction, like this was his album to shine and stand out on. Had they released this with just the instrumentation, I'd most likely listen to it as much as I listen to the official, because it's just that good. And Taylor's skills are so underrated in this scene. Of course, Hayley is the lead, so she's gonna get more attention and more... she's gonna be the more popular face in the band. But it is refreshing. It's always very refreshing when you can hear what Taylor's capable of. I first learned about his talents because when I realized he did most of Monster. Like, he did the guitars, the melodies, and the drums. The only thing he didn't touch was vocals and bass, but he probably helped out with that too. So that was another, and that's why I love it so much, because you can hear his passion, his input, and creativity. I always love when you can hear other members. Like, don't get me wrong, I fucking love Hayley. Love my life. But it's always nice when you can hear the other members shine as well, and it's not just her and them in the background. But yeah, Taylor is talented. This dude is talented. And also the fact that he wrote the melody for Liar around the same time. I don't know if this is true. I saw it on Twitter. You can't always be trusting Twitter sometimes. But given the fact that he wrote the melody for Liar around the same time that him and Hayley wrote Conspiracy, which is now a love song dedicated to him, makes me want to gag on glitter and teddy bear hugs, because I cannot take how cute that shit is. I can't handle it. Like, I love that for them. But I'm not gonna get into that. Side note, the only song in Paramore's entire history that I do not like, and I tried to like it because, again, there isn't a song of theirs that I don't like, but I tried my hardest with this one. I do not like C'est Comme Ça. The chorus is annoying. I don't like it. Like, I like the energy that it brings to live shows, but overall, it's not for me. I do enjoy the verses. It's just the fucking chorus. I can't. That's the one song I can't get behind. I'll listen to the instrumental. I don't know. The song just, it irks me a little bit. Maybe I'm the only one. I try to like it. I can't. That's the only one that I did not like on that album. Everything else I absolutely loved, but C'est Comme Ça is a no for me. Also, another side note, I didn't know, like, at first I wasn't gonna include Hayley's solo stuff because that's her own outside of Paramore, but I feel with Petals for Armor and Flowers for Vases, I absolutely love those albums, and I feel like it came out perfectly during the pandemic. I still feel like we were robbed of that tour. I would have loved a Petals for Armor tour, but maybe she'll do it in the future. We'll never know. But it was pretty cool to see her dive into a more R&B-esque kind of sound, because we never heard that from her before. And she always used to talk about her influences of listening to like Erykah Badu and how she listens to a lot of SZA now and all the other R&B aspects, which is pretty cool because I didn't think that she would be into that kind of music. So it was really sweet to hear her put her own spin on it and like this indie R&B folk infused sound. It was very interesting. I kind of wasn't expecting that from Hayley. Honestly, I don't know what sound that she, like, before the albums came out, I don't know what sound. I didn't know what to expect, how she was gonna sound, because this was like her own mind, her own input. So it was really cool to see what Hayley sounds like on her own. I know that was probably scary for her because she's always talking about, oh my god, I'm never gonna release my own solo work, that's never gonna happen, but then contract obligations. It was a smart way to release a few more albums and finally finish the whole Atlantic Records contract, and I'm glad she did it because now we have something special. A lot of people don't really know about her solo stuff. We do, which is pretty cool. My absolute favorite is Crystal Clear. I fucking love that song so much. Like the whole thing. I love that song so much. It's so beautiful. And I am happy that that was one of the songs that they started playing a lot more in the latter years, because honestly, I thought once those two albums came out and they wrote their own stuff, they weren't gonna really circle back to that. I would like if they would play a few more songs from those albums if they're up for it. I don't know if Haley just released them and put them out and was like, alright, I'm done with it. But it would be cool to hear, especially Over Those Hills. That was another really cute song too, and Over Yet. Like, they do include some of Zach's stuff from Half Noise. It would be cool if they would include a lot more stuff from Haley's side too, because it's not really appreciated as much, and us fans, we want to hear it live. So maybe one day in the future Haley will go on that tour, or just include some more songs. We'll never know. But I had a lot of fun with this one. Feel free to comment your opinions. I'd love to continue this conversation and see other perspectives and deep dives down below. Some points that maybe I missed, or just some points that you guys want to extend on. But that's all I have for you. I'm Highkey, Allpressure, and I'll see you in the next one.